Hey everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's February 1st, 2023. My name's Eric Osterman and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse is a DevOps accelerator. That means that we help companies conquer AWS using our proven blueprints for Terraform. If you're starting from scratch or just not happy with what you have today, then you need to go to cloudposse.com/quiz to book a session with me, and I'll show you exactly what your future can look like. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. If you're curious about Cloud Posse or any of our open source tools and modules, this is a great place to ask. If you're tuning in from our podcast or YouTube channel, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded, and we'll automatically post a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support what we do over here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. Just go to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, youtube.com/cloudposse. So with that said, I'm going to kick it off. I got a light set of announcements today. So if anything caught your attention this week, please do share, and I will. We can announce it on the show today. All right, so one of the first things is a minor one here. GitHub Actions announced push notifications for actions on mobile. That just basically means that you can, if you're on your lunch break and you want to know if that build failed or passed, you can now find that out. Next announcement is just a kind of a more gimmicky site, but I thought it was kind of funny. Since I've been on AWS since I think roughly 2006 at this point, yeah, I could recognize a lot of these experiences or services. So 100-point quiz to see kind of how much you have experienced on AWS. The other announcement was just probably more exciting if you are a SEO geek. Not that this is that relevant to most people outside of Russia. Yandex is the Google of Russia, and apparently some engineer leaked the source code for the search engine, and including all the ranking algorithms, which is a boon for whoever's working on SEO there. Now, those things are constantly in flux, so who knows if this is even relevant today. But what was interesting was that a total of 1,922 factors were there. Now, the vast majority of those were disabled or deprecated, but I think what it does is give insight into the world of building public search engines and how they rank sites and so forth. Obviously, whatever Yandex was doing, the signals there aren't going to be the same signals that Google uses. And this was interesting. We see more and more of these coming out, which are alternatives to Terraform Cloud. There's Terra Team. There's obviously Atlantis, which has been around forever, and a few more. But OTF is a new entrant on the block, and it implements many parts of the Terraform Enterprise API. So you can even use commands like Terraform login and run remote Terraform runs via that service. So a self-hosted alternative to Terraform Cloud that, or Terraform Enterprise rather, that is open source. Works with, it also provides the backend API that can be used with Terraform and a registry, a module registry with agents too. So it's cool. Has anybody been following this project? This was the first I'd heard of it. I don't know when it came out. Let's see what the 200 stars 2 days ago, 10 hours ago, 2 weeks ago. So looks like the project is about a grand 4 months old at this point. or 8 months ago, I guess that's when they started doing some things. Maybe that's the oldest date. Last year, maybe. I don't know. I wonder. Yeah, there aren't too many screenshots from it, and I didn't have a chance to kick the tires on it. The demo requires you to log in and use your GitHub credentials, so I didn't feel like doing that right now. All right. That's all I got. Anyone have some announcements?
There were, hey Eric, this is Vlad. There were 2 tiny announcements. I pasted them in the Zoom chat that I think are interesting. The first one is CloudTrail Lake supports ingesting activity events from non-AWS sources, and they launched with a bunch of partners. So you can get stuff like GitHub events in CloudTrail, which got security folks excited.
Yeah, that's cool. I wonder if this is them building up to eventually announcing a SIM for the data lake.
No idea.
Michael, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I had another topic. If this one is still going on.
Okay. I was just curious if you were had something to add to this announcement. So yeah, let's see what, in addition to GitHub, what were the launch here are the launch partners: CrowdStrike, Kong, GitHub, Okta, Sneak, Wiz. So a lot of the other security platforms out there. Thanks for bringing that one up. And let's see here. What was the other one here? OpenSearch serverless.
Yeah, it finally went GA. Everybody can use it.
Okay. I'm embarrassed to say, we found out the hard way, launching a Redshift cluster serverless with the wrong parameters. That, yeah, it was anything but free. It was $10,000 free.
You can check off one of those boxes on the quiz now.
I think I can. That must be one on there, right? So, like, there's it's cruel when you're used to Lambdas costing nothing, and that's the original serverless, so to say. And then they start introducing, things like Redshift. I feel like it should really, I don't understand. We were doing nothing with it. We were gone for a Christmas break, and it still somehow cost $10,000. How can it be so freaking expensive with a misconfiguration? It should be able to scale down to 0, right? There were no servers running. It shouldn't have cost you anything.
It's the same thing with RDS serverless. There's a minimum ACU to assign. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
Yeah.
There's no RDS. First of all, there's no RDS serverless. There's Aurora serverless v1, which did scale to 0, and it was shit. I ranted about this. Nobody fucking used it. Excuse my language. Everybody complained, but nobody used it because it was ridiculously slow, but it scaled to 0. So AWS actually built what people are using, which is Aurora serverless 2 v2, which is used by people because it's scaling super fast and it's amazing and la-di-da-di-da. But it scaled to 0, so everybody's cranky about it. And it's like, we need to stop saying that everybody needs to spend at most $1 on AWS, otherwise the services are worthless. Open source serverless, yes, the minimum cost I think is $700 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's literal. It cannot be brought down below that right now because they need to provide high availability. AWS legitimately doesn't care, and not AWS, sorry. AWS's customers legitimately don't care. This offering is not, oh, I want to do some dev and I need an open source cluster. No, you can do that locally. It's fine.
Yeah, the use case that we have is different. And I understand, I mean, obviously if I was AWS, they should optimize for where the money's at. And the money's at the customers that need to scale to infinity and beyond. I get it. That's what they should do. The other use case, though, is when you're doing pull requests and preview environments and you want really inexpensive Amazon-backed services that you don't have to spin up as containers. So not necessarily POCs, literally just as part of your development workflow, leveraging some of these things. But I can understand that that's why they're still not doing it, because it's just not where the money's at for them.
And it's also like really hard to do technically. Like the reason Aurora V1, and I'm just taking that because it's the example that we talk about right now. So yeah, it's scaled to 0, but that came up with some really, really rough benefits because, oh, it's scaled to 0, awesome. And now it's scaling up from 0. And we have to load all the data in memory, and all the requests for like the first 5 minutes are super slow. And that's not a valid option. I tried to use it with some customers exactly for that, for preview environments, and it was horrible because the dev environments were slow for the first 15 minutes. And every single workflow was failing. Like, it's non-trivial, and us trivializing it, and you're like, oh, it doesn't scale to 0. It's not only disingenuous, but it's also confusing people that haven't been working with this and understanding, like, oh yeah, I get it. Open source serverless has 2 components, one for compute, one for storage, and we need one of those components.
I just think it should be called something, something else other than serverless, like serverful or server.
No, this is marketing hijacking a term, right?
Yeah.
And it really feels underhanded.
Because it's
I agree with that.
All right. All right, Michael Jenkins, anything an announcement you had?
Yeah, it wasn't a true brand new announcement, but follow up on the KWOK announcement from last week. I just wanted to say it's pretty cool. It was the Kubernetes cluster modeling.
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've been playing around with it for the past week. The documentation sucks, but I'm not surprised at that because it's pretty new thing. But yeah, it's pretty slick as far as modeling nodes and clusters. And I'm just gonna mess around with it for another couple of weeks or so, and maybe I'll have something to actually share. But in the meantime, yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, any other announcements? Come on, Matt Calhoun, you always got something.
I'm admittedly lacking this week because I have been super busily engaged with one of our customers and haven't done a lot of reading.
All right. Well, the only other announcement I have is something I can't really link to right now. It's we are hopefully releasing an overhaul of the Cloud Posse documentation, which will tie together all of our module documentation with all of our component documentation with the other documentation we had under a single portal and searchable. And more to come on that front as we are doubling down on docs this quarter and this year. So hopefully more to announce on Wednesday next week.
Here's an interesting one I saw. I just pasted it in the Zoom chat. It's a heat map. You can take a look at it. It's a Git Heat Map that basically shows you who changes what the most in your repo. I thought that was a pretty interesting one.
Oh, that's cool. That could be really helpful to identify code owners, so what in your repo changes the most? So like
also by whom?
Oh, also
it gives
by
you a by an answer, which
that's
is
really cool. Yeah, that's star worthy. I could see that
repo, so much value.
Yeah, good point. Now, this would be really cool if it could just be a badge that you're, just an embed, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, you need it runs like a Python web server and does a bunch of stuff to generate generate the heat map. So it's not serverless, Eric. I don't know what we would do with it.
Yeah, it would be interesting if GitHub comes out with their own kind of serverless platform, so you can deploy simple things to enrich your documentation or things like that. Everyone's coming out with their own serverless platforms. So almost surprised they haven't.
Well, don't forget who GitHub is.
I know, but as a way to pitch some Azure serverless functionality. All right. Anyone have an announcement? Other announcements? All right, we can jump into Q&A then.
Right.
Let's see.
I did just see that one other thing real quick is that I saw a thing this morning that that some companies are I think OpenAI, someone else contributed to it, but OpenAI manages it now. And it's an AI to detect text written by AIs, including ChatGPT. But it's still not like that well baked. I think see if I could find the article. I think it was
I saw that announcement too.
Yeah, here it is. It's in TechCrunch. But it was they're now kind of saying, like, they're trying to identify if you're using OpenAI or whatever, ChatGPT to like write things. And I think that's what it said. It's only at a 26% success rate right now. And it has a 9% I read somewhere in there, false positive rate, where it will say that you wrote that an AI wrote it, but it was really a person who wrote it.
Yeah.
So it's basically a 1 in 3 chance that this identifies it correctly, which is going to be horrible for what this is going to be as like homework and stuff like that. And them releasing this is disgustingly irresponsible.
When the consequences could mean that you're suspended or worse, right, from a school. I mean, I think it's great that they're working on this, and I think that they need to have something like this. But to your point, Vlad, when the consequences can be pretty bad, the fallout, maybe it's too soon to release it. I think it's good that they're working. I mean, it was fun while it lasted, and I guess it's not over yet. But it's been a fun wild west with ChatGPT. Too bad they keep on, putting in more and more negative. What do they call them? Kind of guardrails on how you use ChatGPT. Yeah. It was a lot more fun in the beginning when those guardrails weren't there.
So what I didn't think about the homework aspect, but I started thinking about like what happens when people become like purists, and then we have tools now that don't let us see marketing copy that was written by AIs. They only let you see marketing copy that is written by humans or whatever. And these tools are, not 100% accurate yet, or not approaching 100% accuracy yet, et cetera. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought that they're starting to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know how they can make the claim that they write text that should be indistinguishable from human writers, but then yet they can create a tool that also tells you that it's not written by a human writer. Like, it's talking out of both sides of your mouth, kind of.
Yeah.
So anyway, interesting.
It's probably just more perfect than human writers. In that sense. All right. All right, let's jump into then Q&A. I have not, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to follow up on the AI topic. I don't want to belabor it, but reminded me of an article that I saw this week from Semaphore, where it was talking about how OpenAI was hiring software developers or coders as contractors. And part of the hiring process is to have them describe how they would solve a problem. And basically what the assumption is that their input or rather the output from this description is feeding a model that can be used to actually solve these types of problems. So, you go back to your ChatGPT, you say, give me an algorithm that does XYZ. And somebody solved that problem as part of this interview, or maybe 10 developers solved it. And now they have a model of how to solve this type of problem, and they can give you the answer. Kind of some of the discussion that I had around that was like, well, they could use this essentially to, companies could use this model to not need entry-level engineers, basically. But at the same time, you need senior engineers that really kind of understand, like, hey, this code needs to be tweaked this way or that way or whatever the case is. But then if you don't hire those junior engineers because you weeded them out using AI, you're never going to develop the senior engineers that have the experience and insight to actually read and modify computer generated code the way that it needs to be. and then you're in this funky sort of cycle that just, it's a death spiral at that point, right? But anyway, just some interesting discussion around that as far as like AI replacing engineers or developers.
So I thought about that too, and I think there's an aspect of that, but somehow at some point it becomes more intelligent than ourselves and is coming up with more creative solutions than the most creative engineer. I'm not necessarily sure that that's the end result if we stopped feeding it with human generated answers.
I think people are thinking about this the wrong way. We should use AI to replace CEOs and C-level folks first, because that'll be the most value provided by AI, and then we can work down to like actually replacing the workers.
So I gotta watch out for my job now.
Yes, I tried to write that, but Eric nixed me being able to do that. He said he canceled the project.
Yeah, sorry, man. It just makes financial sense to get rid of those costs first.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Me or C-level execs to reduce decision fatigue. Boil down the number of decisions or be given a bunch of input and help make decisions easier and quicker. The other thing I was going to say on this point, like in terms of the job process, where I thought you were going was a different direction, which would be an interesting thing where if you could train the ChatGPT, or give ChatGPT specific enough parameters that it could be more of an objective a job recruiter or job interviewer to objectively grade submissions by candidates on questions that you ask, and maybe even suggest questions that you might want to ask and kind of dig into a person's experience. I thought that would be interesting.
Related to this, ChatGPT Plus just got launched.
Huh, that's cool. So I saw they launched pricing last week at some point, and this is then going into that, or this is the same thing?
Yeah,
and this is
$20
for
bucks
20
a month.
Okay, because the other one was professional or something. So this is a mid-level tier then, and then there's the $42 a month plan.
I've got no idea.
Scroll down a little bit. I think I just saw our plans for the future. There we go. I think, remember the other one was when you went to sign up for it, they asked all the product questions around how much would you spend, what's approaching too much, what's approaching too little, et cetera. And maybe they took the results of all those things and actually settled in on 20 for the pricing.
Yeah.
Likely generated by an AI model.
Well, so what I'm really curious about is, I don't remember exactly what my numbers were, but I think I put something like $49 a month would be like too expensive or whatever, like the point I'd have to consider. And well, my number was $42 that they gave me that I saw. I'm just wondering if they're doing some other test here, saying like, are they pricing it at different ways for different people, especially based on what you answered on that survey. I hope not.
But when you answered the survey, they didn't actually make an offer for a professional product, right? Didn't they just say they were?
No, but I literally
gathering?
I don't want to open it up right now because it's going to show my query history and everything.
Yeah.
I had the option to upgrade and it was $42. So all I can say is I could literally have paid for it last week. It was $42, but I don't remember more than that.
Interesting.
All right. Any other questions or insights or announcements or anything adjacent to DevOps, Terraform, Kubernetes, AWS?
Well, I mean, I'll grab the mic if nobody else is going to grab it. I'm curious to see how people are finding unmanaged resources in your clouds, resources that haven't been tagged. Maybe somebody deployed something, shadow IT style, and they didn't tag it properly. And now you're trying to figure out who owns it, so you can either route the costs appropriately, or you can, decommission it. But at the same time, you don't want to break anything in case somebody's depending on it. Just wonder if anybody had any approaches, war stories, advice, or anything like that along those lines.
I mean, I can say that, I kind of take this stupid but functional approach of just announce it widely in some big channel that everyone's in. Hey, whose is this? No response. Hey, I'm turning this off, just disable it, replica 0 or whatever. And then if nobody whines for like a month, just kill it. But yeah, that sucks. I have the same question, but specifically for S3 buckets. If I don't want to mess with an S3 bucket, that's got like a complex kind of policy system, I wish there was just a toggle like S3 bucket off. Someone complains, S3 bucket on. It sucks that AWS doesn't have that feature. But yeah, I have similar struggles.
I think this comes down to I'm actually in the process of solving this problem. I think this kind of comes down to a governance issue. The way we're planning to approach it is all things must have an ownership tag of some sort, whatever you define that tag as. So like your deployments in Kubernetes, your AWS objects, whatever. You can also use those ownership tags for things like costing and stuff like that if you're trying to like bill back to services. But the point being is like, if you kind of set that as a standard, you can then eventually block things that don't have those tags, so like through like an admission controller in Kubernetes, or like you can set it up in your CI process for Terraform. So that's the kind of way we're looking to approach that problem.
I'd like to piggyback on what Alex said and just add, one thing might be interesting is to first implement the SCP to prevent new resources from being untagged to be launched. And then you have a fixed finite set of resources you need to track down, but not a continuous hunt for new ones.
Yeah, tomato, like your execution will vary on your people, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's how we're approaching it.
Yeah, this is more of a culture and way of working and permissions issue rather than what AWS service can I use to implement this. Yeah. It's a debatably easy way of solving this, and what I usually suggest is, okay, this is the prod account. Everybody has read-only, and we do have some folks that do get higher levels of access or on-call or things like that, but nobody can create resources, sorry. And if there's any untagged resource created, we assume it's during an incident or something like that, and it just gets reported into a Slack and we look at it. At the same time, in dev accounts, we don't necessarily care because we give folks their own accounts, and those come with like every resource is deleted every week or whatever. It's a lot. If you're not gonna fix the culture and you're just gonna create a rule that every untagged resource is deleted 5 minutes after it's created if it doesn't get tagged, you're just going to be continuously fighting against what people are doing and what they're incentivized to do. So you need to fix the culture and way of working first, because there are plenty of options available for figuring out untagged resources. But you need to stop the bleeding first and then figure out how the best way to solve it is.
Well, I definitely agree with anything in development, POC, tech specs, whatever. So who cares about tags, right? It's just development's discovery stuff. So what? And it should all be in its own account, so easy to track down. Anything that's mature enough to hit QA or staging environment, of course, should be having tags applied programmatically by your provisioning services. So as long as you get your practice to that level, I don't think there should be too many problems. And if there really is, accounts payable is going to come hunt you down. So there's always that.
Has anyone seen any tool though, that could like search through CloudTrail logs and just tell you like, yeah, this was created by so-and-so, by this IAM user, or by this SSO session on this day?
No, if you have something like that and you've well-informed anyone that has access to AWS to put their name on something, it's on them if it gets deleted.
Mm-hmm.
There was like something that did this. I don't know if it was a Lambda or if it was AWS config or whatever. I remember using it in 2017-ish timeframe. Like we were getting untagged the resources that were created without the owner and environment tag were getting sent to Slack, and that was something really close to a native integration, but I haven't used it in forever and can't remember it.
Isn't there a, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Resource Explorer? Isn't that what it's called? I think there's like AWS Resource Explorer.
They have an AWS tag editor that will help you find resources to tag. It'll just give you all sorts of stuff that is not compliant with whatever you set as a filter.
I'm pretty sure the thing that I was just talking about, the resource, I forgot it now, Resource Explorer API will let you, it has like a database that it creates in every region, and then you can query it to tell it all the resources that are in there, and then you can actually query that to see what the tags are on each one of those resources, and then you could generate a list from that, essentially, like if you use their API to do it.
A long time ago, I made a script, just a bash script, to pair with Netflix Ice, which did all of that good costing analysis. And it would go through and normalize all the tagging so the tags would have the same keys. And anything that was untagged, it would output as a list at the end. It was literally the worst bash script I've ever written. I could not understand it if I looked at it now, but it worked.
Well, here's a relatively recent post in March last year on using a tool called Terminator, AWS Terminator, or Track It. Seems to do something pretty similar to what you're interested in, maybe, and integrates with Slack. What's not clear to me is if it requires a subscription or if it's all open source.
It does require you to deploy some sort of CloudFormation template. I just saw that when you were scrolling through.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what it's actually deploying.
All right.
Thing in chat. I mean, AWS has this, as far as I'm aware, it's natively supported with AWS config. You can set up a rule for required tags, and you can look for anything that's missing an owner or missing a cost center or missing a whatever tag you want. That being said, it's AWS config, which costs money, and rules. I think those get kind of expensive, especially in bigger in accounts with more resources.
I recently had my security guy looking for something to do. He's really our compliance guy. And he came to me with some resources that were costing money in regions other than US East. And basically said, can you turn them off? And I was like, well, yeah, just give me the list, count, region, service, whatever will get me there. And he just wouldn't do that. Basically until we sat him down, we're like, I think there's like, what, 15 regions, 200, 180 services. We have, we were talking about 12 accounts. I was like, this is a harder problem than you think, especially without tags and stuff. But, so we got him to give the actual list, but it's totally related because if your stuff isn't tagged, it's super hard to find out where things are. I mean, and I'm looking at, my metrics and being like, what the hell's that doing in US West? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 17
If an
default
account is
regions.
bad enough, you can just nuke the account.
Michael, just nuke everything, start over, let them know that's the plan.
Well, then here's a related question, sort of off the initial topic, but locking down to just like US East. You can do that with service control policies, right? That's
the way
sort of. Depending on what you're doing, you might actually need to deploy things in other regions, even though you're not really using those other regions. Like if you want all the security checks to pass, you have to deploy like config and security hub, for example, to every region that that is enabled, and you can't disable the 17 initial regions that they had. just like as one example. So
Oh, it drives me nuts.
Another
One of the things I
example
do is for all my stacks, I make the stack input require a variable of AWS region, and then I validate that it matches US East 1, US West, or US East 2, US West 1, etc., whatever I'm going to be using. I just ran into the issue with US West 1, North California, not having 3 AZs. So I'll never go back there.
yeah. Soren, I think you just posted that you can disable regions with AWS landing zones, but you can't disable. There's a group of regions that are not able to be disabled as part of AWS, and then there's a bunch of regions that are opt-in, and you can either enable or disable them. But the other ones like are still enabled. You can block them with security policies, security control policies, like we're talking about, but you can't opt out of like, you know, US West 1 or US West 2 or US East 1 or US East 2, like any of those, like they're all on no matter what. And you can even see it in the
yeah, those are account-driven boundaries that they're putting in place, but you got to realize that a lot of the services they offer depend on multiple separate regions. So there's the limit to what you can do.
Yeah.
So what you're saying there about not being able to disable some of the zones, like on our accounts, we only have, like we're in Europe, so we have EU West 1, and we have EU, I think it's the Central EU in Frankfurt, and that's the only 2 regions we have enabled. There's obviously the global one as well.
That's I guarantee that isn't true. If you go make a call, you can't like US East 1 is enabled for you. Like you might have a security control policy in place that says you're not allowed to deploy resources there. But if you actually look at your list of enabled regions, like through the API call, you'll see there's like 17 of them or something that you can't disable.
Okay, I didn't know that because I just saw it through the web interface and everything looked, blocked off. And if anyone trying, deploy resources, it's completely no-go for them. But yeah, there are security policies in as well on top of it with the landing zone.
If you guys want any examples of the service control policies, we have the template here. I'll share it in the, we have a module called Terraform AWS Service Control Policies. It has a catalog of different policies you can leverage, and then some that are templatized, like region restriction templates. And yeah, good place to start. All right.
I have a question in a similar range. Actually, it's 2 questions. Do you know of any tools that you would recommend if you wanted to sort of do some, have a big picture overview of VPCs and security groups in your account? That's the first question. And then the related question to that is, I'm speaking with someone in my org, and they seem to have this idea that it would be a good idea to create just a restricted number of master security groups that combine all the rules that are required. And I've never seen anyone do that before. I'm not even sure how that would work. I've always known that you create the security groups that matter for the stack that you're deploying, right? And there really isn't a problem with having like millions of security groups, as long as they're created with IAC. And then maybe if you're really crazy about it, you could use something like OPA to validate the security group. So those are my 2 questions, kind of related. What are your thoughts on that?
So Amazon has something called the AWS Network Analyzer. I know members of my team use it a lot. I have, my experience predates this tool, but I don't know, Matt, if you've been using it, or others can share about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly used it. Unfortunately, my audio glitched and I only heard a little bit of what the question was, so I can't answer it in the context of the question. But I've used the tool, so if there's specific questions about the tool, I can definitely answer that.
So he was just wondering how you visualize, complex networks, VPCs, security groups. And I know we use this a lot. We build really complicated transit gateway architectures. And the routing can get very complicated, especially when you're going across multiple regions. So we've been using this to do reachability tests between various VPCs and confirm routing works the way we would expect it to. I assume it does something with I see security groups mentioned here. We haven't specifically used it in some way to test that. That's where I would start. I'll show them.
Yeah, and I haven't used it for the visualization piece at all. I've really only used it for testing. Can something that I expect to be able to or not be able to talk to each other? Do those things actually work? And I've used it to verify or whatever the opposite of verify is, prove that it doesn't do that.
Sorry about the audio glitch. Can you guys hear me better now?
We hear you pretty good.
Oh, okay. So the other part of my question was this idea of creating master security groups that kind of combine all the rules of the security groups just to, I guess the idea is to have better oversight. I don't know that it's a good idea or that it can actually even work in practice. I've always created resources, that go with a particular application stack. The security groups that are required for that go with, the Terraform code for that stack. And the idea of trying to distill all of those into one big security group so that, we have only, let's say, 10 or 20 security groups in the accounts to manage and audit is something that I'm really struggling to see what the value would be in.
Yeah. I have to, I know there's a limit to security groups. I have to imagine this number, there's a soft and a hard.
It's 2,500 is the default limit. So it's pretty high.
That's pretty reasonable
and
now.
60,
I thought it was much
60
lower
rules
before.
60 rules per security group, which is also adjustable now as well.
That's because especially with security groups being leveraged in ECS tasks or services and EKS pods as well, I have to imagine it scales.
Yeah.
These limits always drove me nuts. One of the ways that I started to address it was trying to make a logical grouping of what the services are. So for example, if I know that there's a front end group of services that are always going to be inter-accessing each other, you can just have those stacks use the existing pre-configured existing security group. And then if there's a security group that allows access between multiple segments, you can create an intermediary security group and specify that as the resource, or the target, right? Kind of a bridge between your existing security groups. So I don't know, that's a lot of overhead to manage that type of thing. And it's definitely 2 steps back from letting people run around and make whatever security groups they want. But if you're in a highly formalized environment, it might pay.
Yeah, I think the reason that I've seen it where people are aggregating those or using those master security group things is the last one in this one, is that if you need a lot of different security groups on a particular interface, you can only adjust it up to 16. So if you actually need more than 16 security groups on a particular interface, and you have a bunch of small, finely tuned security groups, then the only way to do it is basically creating a higher level security group that incorporates the rules from other security groups and then putting that security group on your interface. So that's the only place I've ever seen it be useful. Other than that, I would just keep them unnested as much as possible, unless you have some other specific reason, like you were saying, a network, a service-based one, like front-end services, back-end services, etc.
Right. No, there isn't a specific reason beyond that. The person that wants to audit these security groups just doesn't want to have to charge through 150 security groups. And I think that that's a problem that should be shifted left and solved by the peer review process for the IAC, and not a matter of just aggregating all of them into 10, 20 security groups, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this definitely falls under the, this should only be an issue in the dev environment. The second you formalize a service, this should get wrapped into your IAC solution. So there should hopefully be not hundreds of security groups. It should be 10 or 20 in production, right? Very manageable.
All right, Mark Tamsky, you had a question?
I had a quick question, I think, about folks' experience using AWS Instance Connect, which is their SSH key injection system. It's like a short-lived method of injecting a personal SSH key, public key, into the target system, and the SSHD is configured to use it for 60 seconds.
Interesting. What's the like? I to be honest, I was not aware of this service. Just we've been using the SSM's remote shell offering that came out relatively recently.
Yeah, so this requires you have direct IP access. So if you have private units behind, private instances behind your bastion, you still have to get to your bastion first.
Yeah, I guess you would use this if you have a strict requirement on SSHD as a protocol. But if you don't have a strict requirement on SSH as a protocol, then it seems like the SSM agent route is better because it's just going through AWS infrastructure and your systems don't need to be directly exposed.
Sounds like you've been happy with SSM.
Well, we more or less try not to or need to use it anywhere. I would say both solutions have the same problem that you don't have a console log of what happened. And pretty much the only solution for that I'm aware of is Gravitational's Teleport, which does full TTY logging and replays and management of that access. So, and the service. Sorry, go on, Matt.
Yeah, there are two things. The other thing I would add to that. First, it's SSM Session Manager. That's the name of the component that's part of it. And then the one thing that I don't like about it is that it makes it really easy. You put in all these guards to do things, but then if you allow that, what you can do, you can still tunnel. You can SSH tunnel through that connection, so you can actually do like port forwarding to anything else on your network you want. And while that, I guess, for troubleshooting is it can be seen as useful, it falls into, it's not just TTY monitoring you're talking about now. It's like anything that host can access, you can now like tunnel other protocols through it to the rest of your AWS network, which is a little scary if you think about it that way, especially for like data exfiltration and all of that kind of stuff. So I'd just be really careful about using any tool like that makes it easy to connect and spin up a session.
Alex adds that this was probably a precursor to the, do you mean the SSM Session Manager?
No, that's going back to the visualization of security groups.
Ah, my bad.
Yeah, I'd never seen that. I'd never even thought to visualize security groups, but I can see the use case.
All right, any other questions we can get to today? We got about 10 more minutes.
Has anyone come into any documentation around the possibility of degrading network performance based on the number of security groups that might impact an interface?
I don't actually believe when they put the control on the interface that it's in its security group form. I believe that they reduce all of the rules to the composite number of rules that get like limited, on the actual interface to like a single rule that gets applied to the interface based on like a squashing of all the security rules together to make that happen. So I don't think there's a
That would
degradation
make sense.
from what I've seen.
My understanding is different.
Okay.
My understanding is that the limits that they place on at the account that I think you had the AWS account limits up earlier, Eric, and it is a trade-off between performance and the number of rules, and it's a composite. It's a multiplicative kind of limit. If you have 20 rules per security group and you allow 5 security groups per interface, then you have a maximum of 100 rules. So there's like they warn you if you want to go above that number, if you go through support, that performance can be impacted by having more and more rules.
Interesting. All right. If that's a concern they have, then it's.
You can go
That
directly
makes
and ask them if it's still a concern. I don't know if they've re-engineered things, but I mean, at least a year ago, this was still the case.
I wouldn't expect them to have changed anything on their foundational service technologies. Like those are going to change very slowly, and if they do, it's going to be an entire new service offering.
Well,
So, yeah,
this kind of confirms it, I guess, if it's still current.
Ooh, look at that.
100.
Yellow. Only 50.
Yeah, the yellow is me searching the page, but yeah.
No, it actually literally says yellow.
Oh,
Right.
It's a yellow alert.
That's funny.
So I think really under the covers, it's something implemented like IP tables, where there's actually a rule count taking place at the hypervisor level.
Oh, that's a good piece of knowledge to squirrel away.
I would
Why is it being slow?
I would also urge you all not to check the dates for any benchmark that's being done, and to very carefully check the instance type and versions of drivers and ENIs and all that, because AWS has been evolving their networking setup quite a lot in the past years. So even if you do benchmark something, do retest that every, I don't know, definitely every time you change instance families, maybe even sizes, but also keep in mind that AWS keeps evolving the networking.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they've got a lot of custom in-house hardware. Who knows what they're going to do from, quarter to quarter.
All right. Any other questions we can get to today?
What did people get on their purity tests?
Be shy. To be honest, I didn't finish filling it out. I was on my phone. I was just skimming through it.
Yeah, I'm still finishing mine.
Same, I didn't finish. I looked at the test, I was like, nah, too much thing to do, not interested.
Point
Close the
13,
tab.
point 13 mentions antimetal.com. What is that exactly? I haven't looked.
Yeah, we internally somebody brought that point up. We're wondering if this is a slick marketing effort to market something called anti-metal. We don't know what that is.
It's in
I guess
private
we'll find
beta.
out. Okay.
It tells me it's for me though.
Huh. Is it in beta from AWS or the makers of the AWS Purity Test?
I don't know, but it's going to solve my marriage.
Oh, clearly.
And it's going to save me money on AWS.
All right, we are almost out of time for today. We got 5 more minutes. Any other questions we can get to today? All right. Oh, in that case, I can take us to the outro quickly enough. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope we got your questions answered. We'll be here again next week, same time, same place. If you want to get our back catalog of episodes, go to youtube.com/cloudposse. We post all the recordings there. You can join our Slack team. It's a large and active community at slack.cloudposse. Our newsletter. LinkedIn.com/in/Osterman. With Terraform demos, go to cloudposse.com/quiz. Again, cloudposse.com/quiz, and I can show you what the future looks like. Take care, everyone.